Hello YouTube, it's DasGregor and welcome to part 2 of my tutorial on installing KDE in Gentoo from start to finish in a fresh box with nothing open using a VirtualBox. This time I've decided instead of just showing the main screen here, I have everything open. You can see the full desktop. As you can see here, this is the window that I use kind of as a guide, and if you remember from part 1, we looked at this. We added the profiles properly, we edited the make.conf, we looked at the services here with dbus, polkit, udev, udisk, we installed xorg here. Everything went well with those last 72 packages. I did take a break, went to bed because I was very tired. According to this, we rebooted yesterday at 15:53, so I'm going to assume that that's actually about the time I started doing the KDE install, and I stopped about 1:30 in the morning. So that kind of gives you an idea. From 4 to midnight would have been 8 hours, and then another hour and a half, so about 9.5 hours yesterday, just to get a lot of what we recorded in a half an hour done. And now today we're actually going to look at the KDE packages and finalizing the install. So the only thing I've done so far is restarted the VirtualBox and finished up those xorg packages. So we've logged back in. We're going to go ahead and get into our super user account. And now we have a choice. Right here, you can use the KDE Meta, which is what we're going to do, or you can just do a basic KDE environment, or you can just do the bare minimum with Start KDE. I personally like to just go ahead and just get it all so it's good to go. So we're going to do KDE Meta, which means we're going to do an emerge -av KDE-meta. And it'll take a little bit here to calculate and give us those. What we'll do after that is I will of course pause the video so you don't have to sit through and watch all of the compiling. And another thing that we will do is I will add a time entry to the beginning of that so that we will see how long this part actually takes me. Now remember, of course, all of this is dependent upon how fast your system is, how much memory you have, how many cores and processors, etc. your system has, to how long it may take you. This is just a ballpark figure in my own VirtualBox. If you're just checking out this section of my KDE tutorial, I will remind you I am running this with a fresh Gentoo install inside a VirtualBox. Everything was built on Saturday, August 30th for this, so it is everything updated as of that date. I have given my VirtualBox 5 gigs of memory and 6 of my 8 cores to process all the compilations in. I have created a 50 gig VirtualBox thus far to make sure that we had plenty of space to be able to install everything without it running out of room. So the dependencies are going through. We'll see what we can do. We really don't have too much more left in this. We really did discuss the majority of everything that needed done in the part 1 of this tutorial. As you see here, it talks a little bit about the meta packages over here and what they are and how you can pull in just specific ones that this one should pull all of them with. And it talks a little bit about the localization of KDE, and then we will need to look at the boot services, setting it all up, making it so it'll work, whether or not you want to have KDE boot automatically upon startup, or whether or not you just want to allow it to go into the regular console and then you use StartX, etc. All of that is right here. We'll discuss that as soon as we get this last bit installed. So 360 packages, 597 megs. It's better than the gig that we had to download and install yesterday. So maybe it won't take as many hours. We will go ahead and say no. I want to say no to this just yet. Now, if you don't know, if you ever put time in front of a command like this, it will actually give you the time signature of how long it took to complete the task. I like to do that with certain packages or certain sets of packages to give me an idea of how long it took, so the next time if I ever had to do this, I have a ballpark figure of the length of time that it took to get to this certain spot. It won't take too long to recalculate those packages though, since we've done it once, and we'll get that going. Still a lot of packages to install, considering yesterday we had 288 packages to install and over a gig for it to download a source code. This time we have 360 packages with 597 megs of source code. As I did say too, as soon as this starts to compile, I will go ahead and pause the video until we get this completed. If I do run into any problems, if it does hiccup, if it does collapse or fail, I will start recording again to show you where it failed, and then I will figure out what happened and then record how we fixed it. So far, however, in this installation, I have had no errors with any packages downloading or installing, except for at one point I had forgotten to check to make sure that my network was up and running, but we are good to go now, no problems. So here we go, installing the majority of KDE and letting it go through. So let me pull back up my system screen recorder here and pause it for now, and we'll be back when all of these are done. Okay guys, as you can see, we've finished compiling all the applications for KDE. There were no problems. If you look at the screen on the left, you will see that the time spent was 538 minutes, or almost 9 hours of compiling that we've had to do. Now let me just go ahead and minimize this, and we will look at what the next step should be. We've completed Xorg. We've completed the KDE meta package, which is all of these suites of packages here, and we've gotten them all up and running. The next thing we need to worry about is to localize the KDE installation, install the KDE base KDE i10in package. And so what we will do here is set that up. And one moment, while I pause this, my children are being a little loud. Okay, sorry about that quick pause. Hopefully it'll be a little quiet right now. So we want to go ahead and add this next package in. So we'll just verify that it's not there first with an emerge-s KDE-L10in. Allow that to check itself. It has already been installed, so we don't have to worry about that. The next step here we'll look at, and we can decide whether or not we want to use the boot service KDEM, so that when you start up your machine it goes directly into KDE, or at least into the login screen, or if you want to go ahead and set it up so that you can do a StartX and log into the console. I personally like to go ahead and log into the console and not use the display manager, But if you would like to look at those instructions, remember you can go to the KDE Wiki and you can see how you can set up the display manager to boot automatically with that. That's in the OpenRC, or if you're using Systemd, you'll want to look at those options. But for this, we've been using the OpenRC ability here. The last thing that we have is the KDE Plasma Add-Ons, and I'm not sure if those got added in there or not. So what we'll do is emerge-s and then type in KDE Plasma Add-Ons. Should only take a few moments and that will pop up, and those are already installed, so we don't have to worry about that either. Now pretty much we are almost good to go, but one thing that it really should talk about in here is if you're going to use the Start X option, you need to create one more file, and that is going to be placed at the root of your user directory. I'm going to pull up that information and I'll be right back. Okay, and we are back, and what we want to do is at the root of your user directory in the profile, you want to create and edit a file called .xinitrc or .xinitrc. Inside of this, we want to type in exec space ck-launch session space dbus-launch --sh-syntax space -exit-with-session space start KDE. Now I know that's a lot of information right there, but that pretty much sets up the dbus launcher, the securities, the proper syntaxes, and also allowing you to exit back into the command line interface, and then of course the start KDE. Without this file, if you try to run Start X, you're going to get an error and it will not work correctly. So now that we've done that, we'll want to save it and get out of there. Make sure my focus is proper. We've also done a lot so far, so let's go ahead and reboot the system. And I'm going to do that, and then I'll be right back, and we will be ready to test to make sure that KDE now works in our fresh Gentoo install. Okay, we have rebooted, and we are at the login screen. So if you remember, I did not set up KDE because I always prefer to go in at the command line interface, because there's a lot of times when you don't need to go into a GUI, and sometimes you just like to be able to be at this location instead of having the login manager start up. So we log into this, and we're here, and we are ready for the moment of glory. And here we go. Type in Start X, hit enter, cross our fingers, cross our toes, and didn't work. Oh man, you guys are all thinking, oh, look what you did, DasGregor, it don't work. Well, let me show you what I did wrong, and then we'll move on and make it work. First off, we need to look at that .xinitrc file that I put there. For some reason, Start KDE went on another line. It should not be there. This line here, exec space ck-launch-session space dbus-launch space --sh-syntax space --exit with session space start KDE should fix the problem. The reason why it blew up is because it was executing everything here and then exiting without starting KDE properly. I kind of did a test run just to see what happened and figure out the result before I go and embarrass myself with not having the answer. So, ha ha! Anyway, let's go ahead and save that. Now, moment of glory and drum roll. If I had cool sound effects. Here we go. Better work this time. Let's see. Look at there. Look at there, people. We have a KDE session that is starting up properly now. See how important it is to make sure that enters are where they are or aren't supposed to be, spacing is correct, etc. So it will take a little bit of time the first time you log in because it is creating the KDE 4 session for your user account and setting everything else up. Now I will make note at this point in time you're not going to hear anything because I didn't put sound into my session here, only because it will interfere with simple screen recording trying to record. However, nothing that I did really changes anything about that. It will still all be good for you. And here we are in KDE with Gentoo on a fresh install. The entire time from start to finish, still finishing up here, the entire time, as I said, from start to finish was roughly 1 day and about 9 hours or so. But that's from starting Gentoo to build the Gentoo base image for us, and then I started recording, of course, immediately after that. There was about 19 hours of compiling time in that we had to deal with. We can go ahead and close this window. Let that get through. And here we are. We have KDE, a fresh install. You see the menu. We go to applications. If we look in here, we'll find all kinds of goodies. Let's just find something simple. Let's go back, not in games, but let's just see what we have in graphics, for instance. Kde Image Viewer, we'll bring that up. Granted, it's going to be a little bit slow being a virtual box, of course. You should see a little bit different speeds with your own experience. But as you can see, we do have a working KDE. Now, one thing that I will always make mention, and that is whenever you do something in a virtual box, there are sometimes it's not as exactly the same as it will be in the real world. In this case, sometimes it's a little bit more difficult because we're dealing with VirtualBox drivers and virtual keyboards, etc. But it is all here. It is all working. See, if we look at the file manager, it should bring that up and it should show us our home area. There we are. And in VirtualBox, if we expand it, it should extend it. So now here we are full screen with this. Now remember, just like anything else, there's absolutely nothing more than the basic KDE information here. No applications or anything else. If you're going to want to add programs, you're going to need to, of course, get to your console screen if you want to do it within here. And if you wanted a browser, for instance, then you'd have to do something like emerge-av Chromium and let it go through its little thing to figure it all out. And yeah, we'll add, because we are as DasGregor, not as the super user. I have not done anything with sudo, so basically I've just got basic user rights at this point in time, and we of course would want to use either super user or go ahead and install sudo so we can give our local user admin rights enough to be able to install software, etc. But here we are. many hours later with a working KDE desktop, fully functional and such. And I will go back here to the instructions, because if you wanted to make this so it starts up on boot up, what you would need to do are just these simple instructions here for OpenRC. Set KDM as a default display manager. Display manager equals KDM inside of the etc confd xdm file, and then make sure you do rc-update add xdm default, and then you can start it right here manually if you wanted to. As you can see, this is what it would take to install Chromium. We have colorization, everything's in there, and it's ready to go. Now, if you're confused about what I just talked about, what we can do here is, if we leave here and do a logout, we will get back to our command line interface. Now, if we want to set it up so it automatically does this, we will go in as super user. We will go and edit nano-w /etc conf.d xdm, and you see where it says display manager right here? We want that to say KDM. Save that file, and then rc-update add xdm default. Those two simple things make everything automated so that when you reboot, it goes directly into your session. Now, if we want to test it, and since we know it's all should work, let's tell the system to go ahead and reboot, and we'll stay on the line. VirtualBox guest editions failed to stop. That's something we can ignore. Everything else looks good. Rebooting in our virtual area. Go ahead and take the default there. And if all goes well, we should be greeted with a KDM login screen instead of the command line interface. Now, if you ever wanted to undo that, you would do an rc-update del instead of add xdm, and that would remove xdm from the run level area, and the next time you reboot, you'll be back at command line interface. You can leave the confd xdm file with KDM as the display manager, and you should be fine with that. As you can see though, so far everything looks good. Green. We should be pulling up the KDM login screen now. I'm not sure how long that may take. There we are. And we can type in our username, DasGregor, our password, and it's logging us into KDE Gentoo. Here we are. Start to finish with a Gentoo fresh install. We are good to go with KDE. You don't know what a relief that is, because when I first tried it out and didn't know what my error was with the xinit rc file, I had to do a little bit of research to figure it out so that I could get it back to you and make sure that things were proper. Luckily, it was the simplest of things of having an enter where it did not belong. And here we are, folks, back into KDE on Gentoo. That concludes this tutorial. I really hope that helps you guys out. As I said, I will be putting the link to this wiki page for KDE, and really it's not that difficult. It is just very time consuming. There is just a few things here and there that it doesn't talk about, such as that xinit file, but for the most part everything else is just written down and ready to go. So whether it's morning, evening, noon, or night, whatever you're having, I hope you enjoy it. I hope this helps you out. Thank you for your time and patience with this, and enjoy installing KDE in Gentoo. Bye, guys.